Go in 1 minute if you want to put your camera on.
Good evening and welcome. It's 6 p.m. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is our CAC meeting, the Community Advisory Committee to the NYCHA Monitor Team. And we're joined by several members of the committee, invited guest, Chief Secreto, and we have several members of the Federal Monitor Team this evening. So the agenda will be as follows. We will first opening remarks from Federal Monitor reports, and then we will have an introduction of the Director of Safety and Security, Chief James Secreto. Then we'll have a discussion regarding safety and security, and we will have updates as well this evening regarding the NYCHA Capital Tracker project and a demo of the Parks Capital Tracker, of the NYCHA Tracker project, updates from CAC, Community Center Access update, Mental Health update, and NYPD update. And then we'll have closing remarks from Bart Schwartz. We may switch the order depending on availability of our guests this evening. But with that, I would like to turn it over to you, Bart.
Thank you very much, Asha. Can everyone hear me? I've got this improved headset, which is more difficult to use than not having a headset, but
we can hear you fine.
That's good. Thank you. Well, I'm going to be brief. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone, anyone who's new to the CAC meeting, and those of you who have participated or called in to listen to it, to welcome you. This is obviously the last meeting of this year. It's really amazing how quickly the time does go by. And I want to wish everybody a very happy, healthy, and safe holiday season and new year. And we actually end the year on a very happy note, and that is welcoming Chief Secreto to the family. For those of you who don't know him, he's a man who has a terrific reputation, is highly regarded, and I think the management made a wonderful decision to bring him in and for him to accept the responsibilities. So we welcome you and thank you for being here. You may not know it, but in many of our visits to the developments and to the other community meetings, and also certainly at these CAC meetings, safety and security is a big issue for everyone, and we're really looking forward to your taking the reins, and hope you're going to get the support that you need. I put in a little plug for your budget. I hope you get the support that you need from NYCHA. We'll do the best we can to be helpful and supportive in what you're doing. This is very important to all of us. I think that's obvious, and it's one of the things that most concerns the residents. So we welcome you, and we look forward to your the work that you have ahead. So thank you, Asha. I think you said I'll be closing, but I actually have to leave a little early today, so I don't want you calling on me and then there'll be a blank screen. That's not a good idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bart, for that opening. Eva, do you want to do a formal introduction, please, for Chief Secreto?
Sure. I think Bart really covered the bases here, but we'd like to welcome Chief Secreto. He's coming in to NYCHA after a long career with the housing part of NYPD, and we're really excited to have him on board. Really looking, as Bart mentioned, for kind of a fresh start on safety and security issues, and really kind of engaging with the residents in a new way as we think about these issues. So with that, I will hand it off to VP Secreto.
Thank you, Bart, for those kind words. Thank you, Eva, as well. Yes, I'm here now. It's about 2.5 months. I did 40 years, a little over 40 years with the police department, 19 different assignments, and my last 5 years were as the chief of housing. During that time, I also was the commander of PSA 3, which covered parts of Brooklyn housing. And I grew up in the Albany houses in Brooklyn as well, 17 years spent in growing up in public housing. So I know a little bit about housing. But with that being said, I'm learning a lot in this new position in the 2.5 months that I'm here. Just the CCTV. Well, I think the biggest part of this position is liaison and collaborating with the police department and other agencies, DHS and every other agency that may come across, NYCHA, and that's I think that's going to be the biggest help, that I could pick up the phone and call a chief of housing or the chief of patrol or detectives or whatever, and they'll answer my call. And an example of that was we had a homicide up in the Bronx probably a month ago, and my boss called me, wanted to know more about this murder, and it was on a Saturday morning. And I started working the phones, calling the chief of the Bronx, calling the CO of the 4-3, CO of PSA 7. And it's early and nobody's getting back to me. Finally, the chief of the Bronx calls me and he apologizes for the delay. It was about a half hour. And he says he was out. I apologize for the delay. I was out in the ocean fishing. And I'm like, you're out fishing and you called me back? like I'm so honored. And but I say that to say that I have respect from having been in the police department so long, and people know me, and so they're responsive to me, and they're so willing to work with me and the people at NYCHA. So that's a home run right there. And there's a lot of issues here that there's no secret. We have a good share of the violence, and we have a lot of homeless issues. And when I was in the police department, a lot of the commanders were, I would approach them and listen, I'm getting complaints about homelessness in this development. They would deny it. No, it's not that bad. I don't get those same complaints, whatever. But now I'm on this side and people are sending me photos, videos, and I'm saying, wow, all that time, these guys were denying it. It's true. And we have to do something about this. And I don't know if you know, there was a murder in, I believe it was Gompers houses on November 5th. They set a guy on fire, a homeless guy on the 3rd floor. They set him on fire and he died about a week later. So it is an issue and it's a big problem. I get a lot of complaints about it, and it's something that, I'm going to work on. One of the other things this morning, I've been doing meet and greets and everything is virtual nowadays. Today was Brooklyn. Last week I did the Bronx, but one of the managers, property managers, asked me, and I told him, listen, this is my phone number. Any issues, just reach out to me. I want to help. I want to work. And he was like, listen, are we going to give you complaints and nothing's going to happen? And I'm like, no, that's not what's going to happen. I want to be proactive. And I started giving some examples of things I've done already. And I said, the only way you're going to know, just, try me. And I plan to help. NYCHA has a soft spot in my heart. My first girlfriend was in NYCHA. The first girlfriend that dumped me was NYCHA. So I have a soft spot in my heart for NYCHA and the people of NYCHA. So they're going to get my best. I was home for a year and 8 months, and I hated it. So I'm ready to work, and so I can't do enough to try and make things better for the residents of NYCHA. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for me.
Yes, well, thank you so much for joining us. We wanted to get to know you and introduce you to the Community Advisory Committee. As I mentioned, this constituency is made up of resident leaders from each of the boroughs who are also resident association presidents. We have representative from the mayor's office, from DFTA, from DYCE, from City Council. We have Deputy Chief Howard Gottesman from NYPD. We have Chief Brennan and Fabricio from FDNY. We have members of the monitor team. And in particular, I wanted to highlight that we have Fred Baldino, who is on the monitors team, who our investigations and will be the liaison for safety and security issues as well. As Bart mentioned, safety and security is paramount to every single resident we talk to. It's top of mind. It's a fear, it's concern. Everyone wants to live in safe conditions. So we're really happy to have your leader at NYCHA. We look forward to working with you. This group is full of great ideas and suggestions. And one of the things that we've been doing in the CAC is really focusing on, offering solutions. We've all heard the problems. We know, for safety, there's the door issue, the door locks or lack thereof, lack of working intercoms. There's gang violence, gun violence, the homeless population in the developments. There's also, the camera in certain instances, monitoring of the cameras, lighting issues, all of those things we hear about so frequently from residents. So we're looking forward to hearing more about, what your agenda items are, where you're going to be focusing, starting, et cetera. So we hope that you'll come back and keep us updated as we continue to meet. We meet every other month, and our meetings are recorded and live streamed on YouTube as well. And I wanted to, while we have you here and Chief Gottesman on the line, just to spend a few minutes talking amongst us just about safety and security issues, and more importantly, focusing on thoughts for solutions or, initiatives or projects or things you're going to be focusing on. So I'll open the floor to you to kind of give us what types of things you plan on starting on or what you may have already been starting on. And I'll open the floor to the folks around our Zoom table.
Well, one of the things I've been tasked with is putting together a safety and security plan that will be applicable to all the developments. And of course, it's not going to be cookie cutter. Each development has its own, issues. There's different numbers of buildings, different floors. So that's my first order of business. But some of the things I've been seeing, and the thing like I talked about before, sometimes we're in denial that no, we don't have a homeless problem. No, there's definitely a homeless problem in housing facilities. One of the other things was we have these doors that have the magnetic locks. I went to visit one of the developments, and I didn't have the key or the fob for this particular development, so I'm waiting for someone to come out. And a lady came to the door. She just yanked it real hard, and the door opened. And that's a problem because the guys that work with me, they think these doors are great. And this lady came. She wasn't necessarily the strongest person, I don't think, but she yanked that door open, and then we went inside. So a lot of these things need fixing and tweaking. The cameras are good, but they don't necessarily prevent. So, I've been seeing shootings that occur, and but they're not preventing. So I would like to see that have more of an effect as a preventive rather than after, to help us solve the crime. But I'd like to see more prevention. Bart, you got?
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I first got appointed, one of the things I did was go around to the all the DAs and see if I could get money from their forfeiture funds for cameras. That's one of the things that they'd be willing to do. And I'd love it if we could go together. And Manhattan, the forfeiture fund has been depleted dramatically. But Manhattan will build it up again as they bring cases against corporations and banks. Because at one time there was $700 million in the forfeiture fund. Some of the other boroughs don't get near that, but we should go visit them together and try to get the money and just make sure to get the attention that the developments deserve. So
I would love that.
That's great.
I didn't realize that these cameras are so expensive either.
Yeah, no, they
We
are.
priced out a couple, and you're
Yeah.
talking maybe
Yeah.
300,000, and if you want the elevators, that's another 300,000.
Yeah.
It's big bucks we're talking.
Yeah. And the only other thing I wanted to add, I grew up in the 6-9
In housing also?
in Brooklyn. No, not in housing, but in
Okay,
Brooklyn. Yep.
okay.
Asha, I had a comment, if possible.
Yes, please.
Congratulations on your new position, Chief.
Thank you.
Inspector, I know your reputation very well as a former police council president in PSAA. I really finally feel that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because I wasn't too keen on safety and security. So when I heard you were coming on board, I was much excited about it. One of the things that I mentioned, and I spoke candidly with Asher and others, we were promised exterior, interior lighting survey in all the developments. That's a very big problem. I used to be part of the tenant patrol. That's a program that I think it should be terminated, because that $1 million a year, I'm sure with your ideas, we could incorporate something a lot more durable. The doors are much too heavy. They're $20,000 a piece. I think it was a waste of money. They're too heavy for the disabled who are on wheelchairs, I think we should go back to hardwire. Those key fobs, we have to re-investigate it.
You don't like the key fob?
It's a big cost. The other thing is that it's very costly to residents who are on fixed income. Some of them can't even get a key. I have personally went to several developments, including myself, reported it to safety and security. They said, Ms. Lozano, we did an assessment, everything is fine, and it's not. Originally, when they were going to put CCTV, I was one of the ones that didn't want it for all the developments, because every development has its own signature piece. Every development doesn't work just because that CCTV works in let's say 50 developments doesn't mean it's going to work in the other part of Brooklyn or the Bronx. I think we need to thoroughly investigate that, so we can at least get products that are going to be durable, safety, efficient. I didn't like CCTV because I felt it necessary that we needed to have real security, where the crime shouldn't be committed after the fact. We should have been able to see it and connect it with the precincts. Let's have our youth, and that's another recommendation. Let's have our youth be incorporated and being the eyes and the ears of the community, and turn around and have bases, satellites in each of the developments, so they can work, of course, with a criminal background check, but that they can also get paid and take pride of their communities. These are things that I mentioned to Asha, that we really need to, if this is a new way of starting the new year with someone as yourself and your caliber of expertise, let's sit down with all the partnerships, so we can finally cut what I say, the pork bellies. People don't like me saying that. Let's cut the pork bellies. Let's reinvest, because you know what? At the end of the day, what's not broke shouldn't be fixed. And sometimes we should go back to the old fundamentals. I yield the floor.
Now, one of the things you mentioned is tenant patrol. We call it resident watch, I guess now. And I talked to Danny Barber, and he was saying, he'd like to see kids, youth involved in this. And I was tenant patrol when I lived in Albany as a teenager. I was tenant. We had these bright blue jackets, windbreakers. But now is a different time, and the kids, they may be targeted if they wear a bright blue jacket. It says tenant patrol, they might be considered a snitch or something. So we got to find a way to get kids interested in doing something like that, 100%. So, and the same thing with explorers in the police department. A lot of the kids don't want to wear a uniform, walk through the neighborhood, but we need them. We really do. So we got to find a way to make it happen.
Hi, Chief Secreto. Tamika Williams-Moore here.
Hello, hello.
I just want to say congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
We were great followers of yours as a resident association in Queens, Palmanock Houses, to be exact. A lot of residents have voiced concerns with Chief Barrere about the safety and security of their communities. Can we ensure that the safety plans that will be developed for the developments will be tailored to those individual communities and developments? Because I'm sure, as you know, in your policing, you've come across developments that are not like the other. There are some elements that are different, right? And so when you come to Queens and some developments, it's a standalone development, and surrounding community is houses and co-ops and things of that sort. And so the crime is a little bit different versus somewhere else where, you have a lot of the same. So the question is, can we expect individualized safety plans tailored to individual communities and developments?
Yes, and to that point, I'm going to involve the residents, the leaders in these plans. So, for example, when I'm coming to Palmanock to do this, I want someone like yourself because I don't know, what's going on in Palmanock. I need someone that's on the ground that has, firsthand knowledge of what the needs are, what we should be doing when we come there and when we develop these plans. The residents certainly need to be involved. Now, how long are you in Palmanock?
20 years.
Okay, now I was the chief of Queens for a couple of years, from 2010 to summer of 2013, and I was there. You guys had a bad summer one time. A lady got killed right opposite the PSA, and the son got shot, and it was about 3 murders in about a span of like 2 days or something, going back and forth.
It was
so you've had your moments.
Yeah.
Huh?
It was within a span of hours.
Yes. It was in July because it was my wife's birthday and I had to leave her and come into work. But with these developments, some have their moments. It might just be someone gets out of jail, comes back, and wants to pick up where he left off or get his drug territory back. All kinds of different factors that might play into that. But each one is separate and distinct. So to your point, with these safety plans, I've been meeting with people here in NYCHA, trying to pick their brains, get input. But I'm also going to use the residents for each development, the resident leaders. Tell me what I need, what should be important, what's important. That's 100% necessary for any plans going forward.
Thank you, Chief Secreto.
No, you're welcome.
That's good to hear that it's going to really be customized for each development with the resident leadership. Mr. Hall, who's also the Resident Association President for Gun Hill in the Bronx, please proceed.
First of all, I want to congratulate you, Chief. And the best thing about a freshman, they become a sophomore. So you will get the territories down pat. I thought that was a great idea that Bart Swartz mentioned about the forfeitures. I really hope that you take that note into consideration.
Mhm.
I don't know where the Bronx stands, but you can always run up on Darcel Clark. It's not a problem. It's a great idea whose time has come. But that being said, and I don't really want to be redundant because I think Ms. Williams hit it on the head. We have to tailor whatever the needs are in each development accordingly. And for the most part, the TA presidents are the ones who know the terrain. So I get that as you travel from hither and yonder, please keep that into consideration. You hit it on the head when you talked about people not wanting to wear that blue and becoming snitches. And usually the people that come out on tenant patrol are the ones who got the children who are the drug dealers, and then they take over and now you're on somebody else's turf. These are the things that take place, right? So I really hope that you take heed to what was just said because it's going to be very advantageous to your success as far as what we're trying to do from a wholesome standpoint of view. So, and welcome aboard. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you. Thank you. And one of the things that, I haven't heard that much about it now because of with the homeless issues, you don't really want to put people out of housing, but that was one of the things that you had in your toolbox at one point, whereas, you have people selling drugs out of the apartment, you have them doing, gun arrests and that type of thing. You could hold that over their head there. Listen, you'll get put out of the housing, but that's kind of not I don't want to say not an option right now. It's just that, nobody wants to do that. So we're kind of holding back on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very good point. However, we have to look at things from a different viewpoint. And one of the things that are happening is we have people coming here subletting rooms to folks who are really not residents. And there needs to be a degree of accountability. We've spoken about that through our lease enforcement. We've attempted to devise an action plan to eradicate this, and we move things around. All right, we're getting rid of things like chronic rent delinquency. We're kind of moving things up, but people need to be held accountable. Not that you want them to lose their homes, but they need to understand the real definition of accountability once they sign those leases. So in some instances, this may have to be the move. And we were advised if NYCHA and the residents go to legislate something in the courts, that's a very powerful tool. All right, because it's very rare that the residents, leaders, and NYCHA are in total agreement. But we can change things as far as the courts are concerned if we come collectively. And that's something that really needs to be looked at from different aspects.
Now, I saw something in the paper the other day. It was in Lower Manhattan. 3 homeless people had taken over like a $14 million house, right? And they were living there for, I think, 4 months, they said. The cops came there, took them out in cuffs, took 2 to the hospital for evaluation or whatever, and they took the place back over, and they put a security guard there to make sure these people didn't come back in. Now we had 2 apartments, one of the developments up in the Bronx, and people called and says, listen, these people don't belong there. The tenant of record passed away. These people are not relatives. They just took over the place and they're selling drugs. And I'm told we got to go to court to get them out. And the courts are closed now and we can't get them out. So I was wondering, why can't we just go there with the cops and take them out? But they have squatters' rights, I guess, now, and they got to go to court. So it's difficult for us, unfortunately.
Yeah, in housing, they take over staircase property and they own it, and they think they really belong there. But like I said, we're going to have to devise a legal action plan, all right, and make it stick and possibly re-legislate some of the circumstances that are in place right now in order to be effective. So it's something that we have work to do, but we have to do it collectively.
And listen, I'm with you, and I appreciate what you're saying. We had a building down here, Lower East Side, every day, 20 kids in the lobby, cutting school, smoking pot. And I proposed all kinds of different solutions, and they were like, no. I said, what about truancy? Can't we go in there, take these kids back to the school or take them to the precinct, call their mother, their parents? No, we don't do that anymore. Can we do this? Can we do? No, we don't do that anymore. So they wound up putting a cop in the lobby. And I'm just hope, and I think it's gotten better, but I just hope that the cop is not in the lobby with 20 kids around him smoking pot. But I think a cop still has a little weight, and I think it's gotten a little better. So
I want to ask you, Chief, I have one question, well, a comment and a question. I know as of January 15th, we met with the lease agreement department in NYCHA. As of January 15th, that eviction process, the courts are going to open officially January 15th. That's what we were told. I don't know how true that is, maybe for your information. I wanted to know, as far as the security aspect, is it going to be worked under your watch with the security? Because they've had some security in buildings when they needed them. Does that go under your watch, or that goes through the NYPD, or that goes through another department in NYCHA?
now, as far as what? As far as getting
Like when we've had some instances in some developments where the door is broken, they usually contract a private contractor, the security. I really want to make emphasis that needs to be looked at as well, because a lot of the security vendors that NYCHA is using, they're not really reliable. Some of them sit in their car all night. They won't sit in the building. They'll let
those guards?
Yeah, the guards.
that
They'll
you're
let the
talking about.
undesirables in. So are you responsible for that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, yes. So we check on them, and we do find violations, and and they get disciplined or whatever. They're not NYCHA. They're outside company. I think it's FJC is the company, but they're not. They're probably not paid a lot. And one of the things we looked into was paid detail, to getting police officers to come and do those roles, but we're getting resistance that it's the union's going to give them a hard time, that cops shouldn't be getting paid separately for something that police officers do ordinarily. So that's been holding that up.
I'm just concerned all the most vulnerable population, which is the senior population.
That's where we use them. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that has to be looked at. I mean, you have your work really cut out, and on behalf of the Citywide Council of Presidents and the people we represent, I'm more than willing offline to give you my information, because I see it around the city, and I think we could do a lot better. And I think through your leadership, I think we will do it better.
And listen, I'm open to to your suggestions or whatever. I don't I don't propose to know it all. As a matter of fact, I'm learning a lot about what I don't know in this new position. So and I thank you, and I welcome that.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay.
I would like to add, hi, my name is Joe Gross, I'm the president from Williams Plaza. I would like to add to Robert, I think like in a month, the courts will be open. I think we should prioritize first criminal activities. If somebody is like a holdover, is taking over an apartment, selling drugs, or they have like the entire apartment full of 20, 30 people in a lot of traffic, I think this should be a priority before a quiet holdover, because criminal activity in a lot of traffic is not only a problem for one apartment, the entire building is suffering from that. I think we have to have a priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, how we're gonna deal with, I know the court was closed almost for 2 years, but I think criminal activity in any development has to be #1 priority to solve it.
I couldn't agree with you more. But part of the problem is that, like, say you'll have a grandmother that will have grandsons or whatever that are the bad guys, and they won't want to put out the grandmother because of the actions of the grandkids or whatever. So they have this a system where they exclude that offending member, that they can't come back there. And that's not the most effective way, but it's kind of a way that you don't throw grandma out. But so we have apartments that these people have no business being in there, to your point. So you're right, that should be a priority, and it will.
And also, I think in the old times, years ago, the property management will on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, call down troublemakers or the kids is involved. If, let's say, if my son is doing something stupid, the management will let me know, look, your child is hanging out the staircase, drinking, doing something wrong. A lot of times the management's interaction with the parents solves a lot of issues. We have to be more in top of the management to take that action.
No, 100%. Now, as it was a few years ago, we were having a lot of problems when I was the chief there in Throgs Neck. And there was one family there that they were in the middle of everything. The mother got her face slashed, the son got shot, and we got them to move. We voluntarily listened. You know, at first they didn't want to move. We got them to move to another development, and Throgs Neck stopped. All the stuff stopped that was happening. Now, I don't know if it picked up wherever they landed. I didn't see it, but in Throgs Neck, it was, and sometimes it's just one family in the building that's creating mayhem. And even if we could get them to voluntarily move and take that situation somewhere else, that would work.
This was working the old times. I know mine developed a couple of years ago. NYCHA was trying to do the same issue, but they never follow up. So they have to start getting aggressive and really follow up, because leave families, like if you have one problematic tenant in one building on your development, that's usually a lot of issues will happen. So a lot of times if they move on to a fresh start, a different borough, a different development, a lot of times solving all the issues.
No,
faster from fighting in courts for years.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. And while we're still on the topic of safety and security, I wanted to highlight that we have Deputy Chief Howard Gottesman from NYPD on. And I know that there's a good partnership with NYPD and with your office. So I just wanted to turn the mic over to Deputy Chief Gottesman. If you have anything you wanted to say, really appreciate you being with us and your contributions to the CAC.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you for making me a deputy chief. I'm a deputy inspector, but I appreciate the promotion. Chief Secreto, who is a real retired NYPD bureau chief, and I worked together, I think just over 5 years up here in the housing bureau. I still am here. I'm not retired yet, but yeah, I'm listening to the conversation. Everything everybody is saying is 100% true. Mr. Gross, Mr. Hall, Chief, Ms. Lozano. There's a problem in the New York City Housing Authority. When it comes to security and safety, the problem I see it, and I've been dealing with NYCHA public housing for about 17 years now, since I was a lieutenant back in 2004 when I came to PSA 2 as a new lieutenant. The theme is the same. The few bad apples ruin it for everybody else. That's the commonality I see in public housing, whether it was PSA 2 in Brownsville, East New York, or PSA 9 in Queens, or up here in the chief's office where I've been for the last 12 plus years. You have a couple of bad actors in a particular development or even in a particular building or one floor, and they destroy it for everybody else. And it's wholly unfair. A couple of years ago, many years ago now, upwards of 7 years, 8 years ago, a class action lawsuit was filed. The name of that lawsuit was Kelton Davis versus the City of New York. NYCHA was a defendant, and there were 3 lawsuits filed by the same attorneys representing similar plaintiffs. For Davis, it was focused on public housing. Apparently, all plaintiffs in that case were mistakenly arrested for criminal trespass in the building that they either resided in or were staying with somebody in. Now, we don't want to arrest people in buildings they live in. And that happened, and no one was denying that that happened. It was either miscommunication or the officer involved being stubborn, or the plaintiff, the criminal defendant, being stubborn and not telling the officer that they live there, or not satisfactorily communicating with that officer, and it goes both ways. The officer may, but in each one of those cases, someone ended up being arrested in a building that they lived in. Now, we don't want that. So a class action was filed. Out of that class action resulted in the change in how we police New York City housing. And what was not present in that class action were the 400,000 plus other NYCHA residents who were affected, for lack of a better term, with the settlement agreement in that case. And that case changed how we represented ourselves in public housing, how we approach people in the developments, how we asked for, or lack of asking for identification. If somebody did not respond to us, there wasn't much we were able to do after that settlement agreement, other than maybe staying there and keeping an eye on them. I think that's why we have the homeless problem that Chief Secreto mentioned. I think that's why we have kids congregating in that building on the Lower East Side that Chief Secreto mentioned. And these are just cases we know about. There's 2,200 buildings in the New York City Housing Authority portfolio, and this is happening most likely in other places, and it's really not acceptable. People who live in public housing are the poorest residents in the city, and they didn't do anything to have to live in these conditions, to have to walk past groups of young people who may not even belong there. Now, maybe they do belong there. Maybe they live there. Maybe they're visiting someone there. But for us to go in as a police department and not have to get a response from somebody or from a group of people hanging out in the lobby and allowing that group to stay there as per the settlement, unless we have a NYCHA representative or someone with authority saying these folks don't live here, please remove them, we can't really remove them. Our hands are somewhat tied. And a lot of these complaints are after hours, the manager is gone, or on weekends, and there isn't a real NYCHA presence. And that's expected. We don't expect NYCHA to be there 24/7. So it presents a problem. And it's a real shame. And we saw it happening live. Where were the 400,000 residents? Where was their representation in the Davis case? You know, and the 23 people who were arrested in their buildings, they probably should not have been. And like I said, it was a combination of miscommunications, I would imagine. The ideas we're hearing are great. I just want to throw a few out myself. Way back when, now, Mr. Schwartz, you mentioned you lived in the 69th precinct. I don't know if you noticed, Chief Secreto jumped on that and he said, oh, you grew up in public housing, because there is significant public housing over in Canarsie over there. The reason Chief Secreto said that is because he himself, he's very humble. He himself grew up in public housing. He grew up in Albany houses way back when. His father was a caretaker for the New York City Housing Authority way back when. And he and others who have grown up in public housing remember a time where if somebody violated the house rules, there was some sort of penalty added on to the tenancy. Nothing significant, just enough to get the tenant's attention. And that's why the grass stayed green and people abided by the rules for the most part. And we don't see that today. And it really starts with following the house rules and regulations. In New York City Transit, when we take the trains, right, and the buses, there are rules. Those rules are codified in the New York City Administrative Code. If someone violates those rules, they could have a criminal court summons, or they could have, in lieu of that, a civil court summons called the TAB, the Transit Adjudication Bureau, notice and hearing, where they have to go down to the hearing office and either pay a fine, plead guilty, pay a fine, plead not guilty, and then they're entitled to a hearing. The New York City Housing Authority does not have that, and that's because of a New York Court of Appeals case called Escalara, which I think was a 2004 case. And because of some 14th Amendment issues, they decided that the New York City Housing Authority, in the way they were doing it, could no longer fine people. Well, there is a way to still do that with 14th Amendment coverage and protection. And I know there's a new administration coming in. I encourage the New York City Housing Authority and its leadership to take a strong look at enforcing house rules. I think it starts with those. If folks take care of the buildings that they live in, and the rules are enforced, then it becomes a more habitable place. It becomes a place of pride. And, we have folks that are no longer doing whatever they want to do. And there's some sort of order. And I think that's very, very important. Right now, we're seeing a lack of that in some of our developments. When it comes to violence, house rules aren't necessarily violence, but it starts with house rules. It starts with order. We still see a tremendous amount of violence in public housing. Going back 20 years, we see a disproportionate number of shootings per capita. That means per population. Historically, NYCHA is approximately 5% of the city's population, right? About 400,000 people officially, about 8 million New Yorkers, although the residential number is as high as 600,000 as per the Housing Authority. But nonetheless, you have a 5% population, and historically you have what hovers about 20% of the city's shootings. That's troubling, right? To have 4 times, the number of shootings per capita, per person in a concentrated area is very, very, very troubling. Same thing goes for sexual assaults, felony assaults, and other crimes. This year, for example, homicides in New York City. The New York City Housing Authority properties accounts for just under 20%, but it's only 5% of the population. When you look at the square footage, New York City Housing Authority campuses only make up about 1.2% of the linear footage of the New York City map. So why are we having 20% of the homicides? Again, these are things that we've historically looked at. This isn't new to us. I've been part of CAC now about 1.5 years. I've spoken about this. Whether crime numbers go up or crime numbers go down, the violence always seems to stay. It ebbs and flows, but it doesn't change much. This year, overall crime is up slightly, 6.4% in public housing compared to last year. What's driving it are our homicides, our grand larcenies, and our auto theft. Again, auto theft is an index crime. It bumps the number up. Citywide auto theft is up. Citywide grand larcenies are up. But it's really the violence in public housing that we're trying to reduce dramatically. And I look forward to working with all the partners here. Chief Secreto, I can't think of a better selection for the Vice President for Safety and Security than him. Really a product of the Housing Authority, grew up there, 43, I think, plus years in law enforcement in various roles in the NYPD, 40 years, and retired out of the Housing Bureau as its chief. So we're looking very much forward to working with him. He just started about a month ago, and already he's jumping in with both feet. He's putting together a suite, for lack of a better word, of the developments in the 5 boroughs. We have homeless outreach coming out. Of course, we'll be part of it, but NYCHA's taking the lead. We're going to have managers out there letting us know who is not supposed to be in the building, who is supposed to be in the building. Remember, what does a homeless person look like? I mean, we kind of all know, but the bottom line is that because of the settlement in the Davis case, we cannot just walk into a NYCHA building anymore and arrest someone for what we think is criminal trespass. We have to be 100% convinced or have a NYCHA representative tell us this person's trespassing. And that comes out of that Davis case. I don't think there were any winners in Davis. I think there were a lot of people who lost. And I think the ones who lost most were the NYCHA residents.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the homeless outreach program? This sounds really promising.
So the current administration took a position, I'm going to say probably early in 2021, that all non-violent homeless encounters would be handled by the Department of Homeless Services, right, DHS. This applies to not just NYCHA campuses. This applies to any place, subways, the street, parks, and of course, NYCHA, or any private building as well. So the idea was that most homeless people are not violent necessarily, and therefore the police don't have to automatically be called in to handle the 911 or 311 call. Sometimes it's just somebody who needs referral to services. And, you know, in many cases, Department of Homeless Services are better equipped to outfit that individual with whatever they may need. So they hired contractors because their job responsibilities increased tremendously, because now all the 311 and 911 calls were routed towards that agency. And what NYCHA rightly identified early on in the year was that DHS and their contractors were not as willing to go into NYCHA facilities as they were other places, especially public places like parks and Times Square and other places in Midtown Manhattan. Perhaps there was a fear of what may be going on in the building, but whatever it was, they were not going in. So the current chief operating officer of NYCHA put together a team with the NYPD as well as DHS, and we formulated an agreement where we would be doing joint operations. And so, Chief, we don't have definitive dates yet, but in the very, very near future, prior to the 1st of next month, we're going to be doing sweeps of the most problematic buildings in NYCHA. Now, it's important to say, if someone wants to leave the building and either take us up on services or just leave and go elsewhere, they certainly can do that. It does not mean that they will not come back, right? It's not a crime to be homeless. It's not even a major crime to go into a building that you don't belong in. It's not considered a burglary. It's not a felony, as long as they don't intend to commit a crime once they're in the building. So if someone just goes into a building to warm up, it's not a burglary. At most, it's a criminal trespass. Under Davis, we have to ask them to leave. If they take us up on that, then they leave. If they go with the Department of Homeless Services to shelter, wonderful. That's kind of what we want, especially during this time of the year. We don't want them out in the street. But they could come back. They could come back. And
thank you so much for explaining. I'm really excited, though, to hear that that's program is underway. That's really important. I want to thank you both for being here, and now turn to Michael Kerwin, who's here from FDNY to give an update, because as we've all heard, there's the access to the buildings and the key fobs and the door access is a really big issue. And that was one of the early issues that we had identified on the CAC, that perhaps that's something we could work with FDNY to ensure that every unit has the appropriate key fob access. So can you please give us an update from FDNY? And also, while we're hearing from FDNY, I'll highlight Fabrizio Caro to talk about training. Thank you both for being here.
You're welcome. I'm Mike Kerwin, FDNY Deputy Chief, working in the field and also in fire prevention. So on December 3rd, a memo went out to all units, and this was to update FDNY operations in the use of the NYCHA key fobs. And in this update, fire companies were informed that these key fobs are universal, and they provide access to all NYCHA housing lobby doors. Each of these fobs are assigned an individual serial number that allows NYCHA to track key fob usage. All previous issued key fobs are being rendered inoperable once the new ones are delivered. Now, some information here that got disseminated out, which should help with security and also trying to prevent damage to those entrance doors. We've informed fire companies that the main lobby entrance doors are generally under video surveillance. We've also instructed our units that if they have to force a lobby entrance door, that NYCHA will be notified via the borough dispatcher. In addition, we're instructing that the fire company that did force the door forward a letterhead report to the chief of operations with full particulars. So we're hoping that this policy will possibly prevent unwanted damage to these entrance doors.
That is great to hear. Your Bart Schwartz is clapping. That is really great news, an important update. And glad to hear that there will be that coordination with NYCHA and the information sharing so that they will know and be able to follow up appropriately. Thank you for that. Fabricio, please.
You're welcome.
Yes, good evening. This is a quick update from FDNY Community Affairs, and we've been working on several things as we are now in what we deem fire season with the colder months. We are taking the opportunity to enhance public education, both from a digital standpoint and also from publication and actual physical training. Our fire safety education unit is working again, or consistently working and has continuously worked with resident engagement and also with partners such as DYCD in terms of approaching both residents associations and also youth and families in terms of establishing fire safety trainings across NYCHA development citywide. From a digital standpoint, we have created and have a library of content that revolves around all aspects of residential fire safety, ranging from kitchen safety to knowing the importance of having and maintaining a working smoke or carbon monoxide alarm, to now with the winter and holiday season, talking about all the safety tips revolving around decorations, heating, basically to ensure that families are aware of best practices to avoid any serious incidents caused by fire. Furthermore, we are emphasizing the residential escape plans and what to do in non-fireproof or fireproof buildings. As there's been incidents in the past in NYCHA developments where members or residents do try to escape instead of sheltering in place if it's a fireproof building, but we've been looking to emphasize that message as well. Also, with the new rise in fires caused by lithium-ion batteries, all the devices that use them, we've been basically pushing those safety tips and are looking for more partnerships and working with resident engagement and NYCHA to basically ensure that messaging is going out on a constant basis, either through newsletters, digital newsletters of the sort. So we are working and looking to explore that with NYCHA resident engagement. Recently, within the last month, we were contacted by NYPD Housing Bureau Community Affairs. NYPD had established a memo internally of addressing fire safety, working with the FDNY, and together we are looking to establish a set SOP or standard operating procedure that basically identifies two things. One, how to enhance visibility and outreach in working with NYPD Housing Bureau and FDNY Community Affairs and Fire Safety Education to basically establish immediate outreach plans following a serious alarm or serious fire incident or fatal fire within a NYCHA development. So essentially what it would be is match or what we're doing currently post a fatal or serious incident in terms of tabling and education outreach, but have the help of Housing Bureau and officers within the Housing Bureau within the respective PSAs to basically work with the general development councils or resident leaders of basically equipping them and training them of how to basically enhance fire safety awareness and fire safety training, more of like a train the trainer post serious incidents. Beyond that, what we're looking to do with the Housing Bureau is see how we can establish, again, a more formal approach, somewhat similar to like a CERT program, but specifically for public safety and for fire safety along combined, where we would periodically or quarterly train resident association leaders to serve as either as public safety / fire safety ambassadors and activate them seasonally to help us enhance fire safety messaging. All of that is in the works right now, but hopefully within the next couple months, or I would say within the next month actually, we should have something in play in written format for review, and hopefully it goes in approval, and hopefully by February, March, we begin the trainings to ensure that safety and outreach is taken to another level.
That's so important. Thank you. And VP Secreto, is it in your wheelhouse to coordinate with FDNY? Is that your purview as well?
Yes, and I'm kind of I've been surprised by the number of fires that we have in NYCHA. I'm going to say almost every day there's a fire somewhere, and I'm reminded that that I had a fire in my apartment when I lived in NYCHA as well. But I have a question for the fire department. We had a fire in Mitchell Houses, and a 6-year-old was killed probably about a month ago. And the fire department evacuated the 19th and 20th floors. And evidently, I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the procedure after the people have been evacuated, and they lock the doors and they leave and they go with relatives or they go to a hotel, there's a secondary search that's needed. So now the doors are broken to make sure there's nobody in there. And some people lost property because of burglaries or whatever. So I thought that in the police department, I don't know if you can see this, there's a seal that goes over a door. When someone passes away that lives alone, after the family gets the insurance policy, the whatever paperwork is needed, that door is locked, and this seal is placed on the door between the door jamb and the door, and it would show that someone went in there, after it's sealed. So I was wondering if we could put this seal. Of course, we changed the wording to say like this apartment has been checked, no one has entered, and we're putting this seal on so that you would see that this seal is intact and that no one has gone in this apartment since you evacuated them. Is that something that we could pursue and a possibility so that, that this doesn't happen again, that these people lost their property because, of this secondary search? This is a question.
This is Mike Kerwin, Deputy Chief FDNY. So I am not familiar with exactly what happened at this operation. In most building like that when you talked about is considered a fireproof building, and generally the only apartment that needs to be evacuated is obviously the fire apartment and the one apartment that is above. All the other residents are generally instructed to shelter in place. Now, I don't know the particulars. There are some reasons why we would evacuate other apartments, floors above. That generally has to do with high CO readings. So I don't exactly know why all those apartments all those residents were instructed to leave. Now, as far as performing secondary searches, if we felt that there was a need to get into these apartments to check, and naturally we have to force entry. Once we do that, we leave security for those apartments up to the NYPD.
Right.
We can post members in the interim in that area, but that's our general procedure. We're going to remain on scene nearby until the NYPD can come and secure those apartments that we had to force entry to.
Now, Chief, to your point, the fire was not in a particular apartment. It was in what we used to call the incinerator, I guess the hopper or whatever.
Okay.
So the smoke was on the 20th and the 19th floor, and it was heavier on the 20th floor. And I think the child that died of smoke inhalation, if I'm not mistaken. So, I understand the secondary search. I just was wondering if this seal would be a way to get around it, and I'm just like an employee suggestion type of thing. Like, could we use that in the future? Is it something that is worth pursuing, or Secreto, that's a dumb idea, forget it? I don't know. I'm not blaming the fire department. They did what they had to do, but the fire was in what was called, used to be called the incinerator. And it was at the upper floors. There was a lot of
Right.
smoke in the hallway. And that's why people had their head out the window because smoke was going into the apartments. So that I understand why they evacuated everybody. I just would, if we could do that, put this seal across the door to show that, hey, nobody's gone back in there since we evacuated them, it would probably make life a little easier for the residents. Just a thought.
Generally, when we have to evacuate people's apartments, now there's going to be a lot of factors. It's going to depend on the type of building, on the extent of evacuation, of how serious it is. So generally, we perform what we call the primary search in the initial stages of a fire. It's a quick search of the fire area, the fire apartment, and then we extinguish the fire, and then we perform a secondary search, which is a much more thorough and slow, painstaking search to make sure that there is nobody that we miss. So in a case like this, if we performed a search, what we do is some companies will carry these door tags, these door markers, and we'll leave them on a door to indicate that a search was performed. So that's something that we would use to prevent unnecessary re-entry. And I don't know the full particulars in this, so I don't really know why they would have forced doors unnecessarily. It's very likely that residents may have left, and fire department units were not sure that apartment was then later unoccupied. And it sounds like the type of fire that it was, with all the high smoke and CO levels in the upper floors, that would be a reason why the fire department would need to get into all those apartments on the top floor, and it sounds like the top 2 floors. So if we generally we will try to get in, using the least amount of damage. We've always been trained to just try the doorknob first. Many times people just leave the door open. We'll knock on the door numerous times, and then if there's no answer, we will have to force the door to make sure there's not anyone left in that apartment that got overcome by smoke or high CO. So depending on the operation, depending on the urgency, sometimes residents will flee the building, and we will not exactly know. It's hard to keep track in a heavy smoke condition with active fire to keep track of exactly which occupants left which apartment. So in order to be sure, as the operation de-escalates, we need to get back in there and check. So
Yes.
when we do that, though, when a fire company does do that, we notify the fire incident commander. These are the apartments that we forced. We're going to need NYPD here for security. And generally at these fires, the NYPD is already on scene. And we tell them we forced numerous doors on these floors. These are the apartments. And in the past, NYPD would go up to those locations and provide security.
Yeah. And I think it was too much smoke on that floor. But thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you both.
You're very welcome.
Before we leave the safety and security topic, I just want to turn to my colleague, Fred Baldino, please.
Oh, thank you, Asha. Chief, once again, I want to congratulate you as well on your position, and obviously,
thank you.
Your reputation precedes you, and it looks like Knights is going to be well served. I just wanted to let you know that on behalf of the Monitor, I oversee a group of guys, former retired law enforcement, but also guys with OSHA backgrounds and OSHA certifications, very familiar in construction site safety. And these guys these people, roughly 12 of them, are embedded in the developments. They do routine and regular visits to the developments, and they also do what we call walkthroughs of the developments, highlighting specifically tying into the 6 pillars that to the pillars that we're mandated to address. But safety and security is always coming up. It's always something that it just smacks you in the face when you're out there. And these guys are retired in law enforcement, but you can't take you could take them out of the police department, but you can't take them out of that job. And so my only point is that there's a lot of things that we've identified. A lot of things have come up both on the safety and security side that make sense. And quite frankly, the part of our protocol requires us to make referrals. And some of the things that we see out there, we refer to the development staff. Sometimes it goes to compliance. Sometimes we refer cases to the IG. We also deal with the NYPD on things that we see out there, as well as DEP and DEC as well. So there's a host of things that that these guys are exposed to and that we see all the time that I think would be helpful to you to use us as a resource. And again, because we visit these developments, we're there on a regular basis. We see something, we notify someone, we follow up to see if it's been addressed, and that's generally the protocol out there for us. And just as an example of what we see, we were talking about earlier about closed circuit TVs and the cameras. On any given day, you could walk into any development, talk to any assistant super in the morning, and you might see them looking at their cameras. They're looking at it for various reasons. Our perspective is that we're not utilizing those cameras to benefit people on the safety and security side. You're looking at, it's very possible to identify people who are hanging out or loitering in the buildings that don't belong to that building. A lot of the assistant supers know who the people are. When they point them out, they're just fearful to report these things. And so in keeping with that, you talk about a citizens watch or a tenancy group. Yeah, I agree with you. You can't have them walking around the site in blue jackets because they're just going to be targets. But I often think that if we utilize the cameras a little better, that being that actually have somebody monitoring those cameras as opposed to just in hindsight looking at these cameras to identify a crime that's committed. And so, there might be things along those lines that we should probably sit down and talk about. And again, we could offer you any number of observations that we've seen out there that may be helpful for your perspective.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Fred, for the amazing work that your team does every day. Mr. Gross, I have to apologize. I'm going to switch gears because we do have another distinguished guest with us. So I will turn it over to my colleague, Andy, to make an introduction and to give us an update regarding the tracker system, please.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. And let me also welcome Chief Secreto, with whom I had the honor of working at PD. And the exchange that you just engaged in is evidence of the evolution of this committee. So for the first year or so, we're about fact finding. The second year or so, we're about relationship building with the stakeholders. And this third and fourth years under the leadership of Eva and Bart and Asha, we're really moving into remedies. And you're certainly the person for the job because you just happen to have a remedy in your pocket. So that's very impressive.
Thank you.
So you have the right person at the right time. So one of the remedies that we're looking at stems from one of the very beginning meetings where we heard residents, we heard elected officials talk about their giving money to NYCHA for things like closed circuit TVs or door stops or any kind of safety and security, but other things that are capital funded, and no one knows where that money goes. With the under leadership of Eva, we've started looking at first, can we track that money? And how do we track it? We just found recently that NYCHA does have a tracker, a capital tracker. But we found, however, that is basically unutilized because of its difficulty. So we had interns look at, okay, what other kinds of trackers out there? We knew about the Parks Department. And so with Eva and the mayor's office, we convened a meeting with the Parks Department and they walked us through that tracker. And we have the person who is very instrumental in that online. And we thank you, Stephen, for waiting all this time, for the short notice. But we wanted the world basically to see your tracker and see how it could be used for NYCHA. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen so he can show you their tracker, and then to Eva to talk to you about where NYCHA is going with this project.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and kind of do a quick run through with our Parks Capital Tracker.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. My pleasure. So everyone should see my screen with Google. So basically, anyone who's interested can just search for the Parks Capital Tracker, and it's one of the first hits. So the Capital Tracker is an online searchable tool that allows anyone in the public who's interested in Parks Capital projects to learn more about our projects that are currently in design, procurement, and construction. So this is the opening screen. On the right, you see, different pieces of information. If people wanted to know how we build our parks, they can click on it and here's some additional information. Our design phase, different percentages, goes into some detail regarding the Capital Tracker. I'll show you some items later, but you have over here, there's 4 different status tabs. We have active projects, proposed projects, partner projects, and completed projects. As the project get completed, they automatically move to the completed projects tab. So I'm going to focus on the view active projects. There's 2 ways to search for a project. You can go based on the map. Like I said, a lot of this data comes from our capital projects project management system, which tracks all of our projects from inception to completion. We have 40 plus business processes that move our projects along. But if someone just wanted to poke around and know their location, so let's say, I'm going to go here, Pomnac Houses, since we were talking about it. If you know where the map is, we currently have, in partnership with NYCHA at the Pomnac Houses, open space construction. So they can click on the point and view the project details. So here is the basics. We have our design is complete, procurement is complete, and currently in construction at 37%. And then there's some basic information in project timeline. You have the design start in 2018. You have the projected completion and then the actual completion date, procurement as well. And it just sort of moves. And based on what we saw before, how we build parks, these percentages here for design, 30%. So these are milestones that are triggered from our capital projects tracking program. So there are large jumps. Once a project reaches that milestone, it triggers the display up here, design and procurement as it moves. But for construction, we use our weekly site reports. Our resident engineers go out, submit weekly site reports into our system, and the project can move 1%, 2% in a given day, a given week. And then it will move. That's why you'll see 37%. You might see 37.5% next week because limited work was done because of potential issues and things like that. The other option to search is to go into the tab. So like I said, we break out our projects by borough, and then we have our citywide tab. So let's go and find Pomnac Houses again through this method. So we have our park locations, we have the project description, and then the current phase. So if you want to see an overview of all the projects the Parks Department have in Queens, you can just scroll down the list. And then just keep going. So Queens, big borough, a lot of work. A lot of these don't have a park location because it's tree planting, but NYCHA Pomnac Houses, you can click on the link and it'll bring you to that same page. Most of our projects will have a schematic. You can click on it to get a better view of the design work that was done. And this is what the area or the project will look like once it's complete, to some degree. So it highlights certain work that needs to be done. Like over here, we have lighting, concrete pavement. So, parks right now, we're trying to go greener for our facilities. So we're trying to remove a lot of asphalt and hard surfaces and put in more open green space, whether it's passive or active green space. So I think for this project at Pominock is a similar approach. There's some seating areas and there's some limited hard surfaces. But like I said, all of this information comes from our capital projects program, and it feeds, and we refresh and sync the data every morning. So any work that was done in our system today will be published on our capital projects website tomorrow. We usually do that probably about 7:30 in the morning. So for the most part, as people are checking this throughout the day, it will be refreshed data and pretty much accurate to what we have in our system.
What we were particularly interested in was the funding. So you see in the Pominock, you have Mayoral Funding.
Oh, yes.
But it shows other areas of funding like city council or even grants. Is that correct?
Yes. Let me bring up Pominock again. So yes, over here we have funding because in our capital projects program, we do pull data from FMS on a bi-weekly basis, and we upload it into our program, and the website pulls funding codes to populate total funding and funding sources. So depending on where the money's coming from, you may, like in this case, it's just mayoral, but let me go back and see if we can grab something that may have another, let's go with ball field. So over here, we have mayor, borough president, and city council. So this project here in the Bronx, Crotona Park Ball Field, synthetic turf, has money coming from 3 sources. The project is almost $5.5 million. And this is the rebuild. This would be the synthetic turf soccer field once it's done. So this is a rendering of the existing space and the rendering on top of the overview of the park.
Wow. So you can imagine we were so excited by this, and thank you so much for taking the time to show us this and to meet with us. And Eva was instrumental in pulling this together. So I'm going to turn it over to Eva to tell us, okay, so now we've sat down together and we've seen a model. Where are we going with this?
Thank you, Asha, and thank you, Stephen, again for presenting. The Parks Tracker really is tremendous, and it is something that NYCHA aspires to. I'm not going to deny that. So we have started pulling together our data team, our capital team, and our IT team to start work, and a lot of work has already started. As you heard from Stephen, there were some critical things that he said about the data refreshing, that the data is automatic from the construction teams into the system, the funding is into the system. And so for NYCHA, we basically have to come up with a platform that brings our funding data in from that system, the construction information in from that system, the mapping and other data in, and put it all together. But we are working actually to very similarly model the Parks Tracker, because it's something that we know community groups, electeds, and others have gotten used to. So we want to map it as much to that format so that it's a user-friendly and something easy for everyone to pick up on. This is something the chair is very excited about as well. So our IT teams are working on this now, and we hope to launch it by the spring. We're actually really hoping to get it launched and out there by the time the budget hearings come around, because we know for city council budget hearings, it is a top question we're always asked about. So that is our goal. I'm happy to give status reports at every one of the CAC meetings coming up and even demo it once we're ready to go live.
Thank
Great.
you, Stephen Co. That's a really fantastic model that the parks system has, and I'm so glad to hear NYCHA is aspiring to get there and is working on it. So thank you, Eva, for your leadership there. And thank you, Edna, for putting this all together. While you have the floor, Eva, I was wondering, do you have any other updates for us tonight?
I can give a very quick update on the community center intake process. This is a new project that we pulled together based on some of the feedback from the community organizations on the CAC, that it's very difficult to submit repair requests and other needs to NYCHA through our CCC, our Customer Contact Center, which frankly is very much designed to take resident complaints, but not as well designed to take community center complaints. So we had one meeting in the middle of November with all of our community center partners and the CAC members as well, and some NYCHA staff to really brainstorm around this issue, come up with what would really need to be in the intake process, in the script, as we call it, for the operators. And I know it took me a little while to catch up on all of those notes. It was just a really productive conversation. So it was just last night, I sent out all of the notes and next steps from that meeting. I have a new staff person on board now who's going to be assigned this project, so that right after the new year, we're going to hit the ground running to co-design with our partners a new intake process for community centers to be able to accurately take in all of their repair needs and respond better to our community partners.
So Asha, if I can just make one request of Lilith. So we want to make sure that we're mindful of the MOA and 964 and other rules that not only require, but it's just good practice to bring the residents and resident leadership in the things that we're doing. So we want to know from you the best way to bring these projects to the attention of CCOP.
Like I said, we have an open door policy. You have my number. Whatever I need to do, I'm here to extend it to everyone. I am excited that finally, on behalf of CCOP and the residents we represent, that we finally got a memorandum of agreement. I was waiting until the permission of our hostess and mostess, Asha, to elaborate on that.
Please use this opportunity, Ms. Lozano.
Well, I want to wish everybody a happy holidays. We've had a rough year. On behalf of CCOP and our chair, he wanted me to have this opportunity to inform of all the things that CCOP has been doing for the last 2 years. As many of you know, you heard, there was there was some moratorium that was imposed by HUD stopping elections and the election process, and it has been lifted and moved forward. So we're excited about that. The elections that were held first were those developments that the recognition was removed, or there were term limit out, or there was no representation in places where the leadership stepped down. So this was done, and NYCHA proceeded to work on the next set of elections, and the notice from HUD and stated that the election process is needed to be held on December 31st. However, there is an extension to February. Our chair, Danny Barber, elaborated on that. I want all the resident leaders to know that they need to reach out to us by any means necessary to let us know if you're feeling bullied, uncomfortable, the process. Some developments are not getting enough resident participation. We're concerned about that. There are some developments that wish not to have the internet virtual, because we still have the issue with squatters living in these apartments illegally. That has to be addressed by the lease agreement department and all the legalities, the legal department. With all the issues and the rushing to complete the elections as the CCAP chair, he wrote a letter to HUD expressing the urgency for an extension till February to complete election. And Chairman Russ also wrote a letter requesting that January and the residents were granted a later time. So they still have until February. So I don't want anyone to feel rushed. We don't want anybody to feel rushed. This is done because the process was being rushed and there were too many complaints behind the process. So we are working actively to make sure that every resident association, a new one, an old one, that they're getting their fair share of democracy. This process has been open, so we're looking forward that everybody is gonna be dealing with that. We finally completed the MOA. We're excited. We came together with negotiations with NYCHA and produced a document that reflects the 964 HUD regulations. And it will take time to get NYCHA and the resident leadership citywide all on the same page. Everything is a process, everybody. So it's taken, tirelessly, a lot of effort. And I want everybody to understand, they can say whatever they want to say about each and every one of us, but these positions are not easy, especially when we're dealing with all kinds of trials and tribulations. As well as NYCHA and HUD, they finally partnered to present citywide training of the property management, the resident leadership together to provide a true, like we like the word in NYCHA, Eva will probably chuckle on this one, transparency. And to push the same message citywide to all parties and NYCHA residents. This memorandum agreement is the document that was drafted by the interpretations of 24 CFR 964 regulations, and is spearheading the partnership finally between NYCHA and its residents. Again, I would like to emphasize that this change is the hardest thing to accept. Change is usually not easy, but it has to be done because you're not sure how the change is going to affect. We're not sure how it's going to affect each and every one of us on a federal monitor level, as well as on a city level, a state level with elected officials. But eventually, we're going to move forward to positive changes. And it's been pushed for over the years and changes from both sides. We can never continue to be one-sided no longer. We have to continue to look at what we have done that didn't work and the old fundamentals that did work for each and every one of us. And we have to make sure that we preserve housing for the next generation, because we all know that in the city of New York, there is no real affordable housing. But you have to do and work. All of us have to work and educate ourselves about who we are. I've done this for 34 years and it hasn't been easy. And you know what? I'm gonna continue with my colleagues and all my counterparts in NYCHA that, you know what? If we do not work together to unify, we will not preserve housing. Thank you for the presentation of me able to provide it to you, and you all have a happy holiday.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lozano, for that update from the City Council of Presidents. We appreciate that. I want to be mindful that we are at the end of our allotted time. I apologize that we did not get to all of our important updates, but I thank you all for sticking with us and for the important work you all are doing and helping to move so many important initiatives forward. I'll turn it over to the Deputy Monitor, Dan Varnell, please, to close us out for the evening.
Thanks, Asha. And again, welcome, Chief Secreto. So just really quickly, this was a great call. And, I also want to acknowledge Eva for her suggestion a couple months ago, working with you, Asha, and with Edna to kind of focus these CAC meetings on a couple issues, on the whole group working on a couple of issues, which I think makes these much more productive. So we appreciate all that. So, going back to safety and security, just real quickly, obviously, the only way we're going to meet these challenges is to work together on all of these things and to chip away at, the various challenges that we've gone through this evening at the developments, which of course all of you know all too well, particularly you that actually live at the developments. So we'll continue in that effort. And again, have a great holiday, everybody. Thanks for a great meeting.
Happy holidays to you all.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Have a good one.
Happy holidays.